The Battle Cats is an incredible game. The amount of content it has for a silly mobile game is just ridiculous. The incredible amount of units, stages, and enemies is insane. I never thought I would still be playing 6 years after starting. However, this game does have some pretty notable flaws, and in my opinion, the biggest problem the game has is game balance. In this video, I will explore the problem in depth and suggest potential solutions. This game is massive. It has over 3,000 main stages alone, and that is not even including event stages, which adds even more stages. The fact that there is such a large amount of stages means there is a very large difficulty difference between early game stages and end game stages. This is a problem because if a unit is relevant in the early game, it will probably not be relevant in the end game. This problem can be alleviated through true forms and talents. This can keep a unit good and relevant throughout most of the game. One example of that is Courier Cat. Courier Cat is not that good until its true form, where it becomes a cheap single target nuker. While it is an amazing unit, it can't destroy an entire part of the game. It has significant flaws like being single target, which makes it very hard to use on stages with too many peons. Making units relevant to most players at most stages of the game is very hard, so Ponos usually releases content tailored for players at specific stages in the game. One example of this is Courier Cat, a unit that is very relevant throughout Chapter 3 of Empire of Cats, but sadly becomes irrelevant later in the game. On the other hand, there's Socrates, who is a solid anti-angel counter, but he is locked behind 0 legends, meaning he is an endgame exclusive unit. When Ponos releases units that attempt to be relevant for very large parts of the game, sometimes it can go well, but sometimes it can go very, very poorly. On May 18th, 2022, Ponos released the version 11.5 update. Among other things, this update added Ancient Egg N101, a unit that can be obtained by beating 5 of the newly added Behemoth Coaling stages. This is a relatively easy feat, and players in Into the Future could beat these stages. His true form is acquired also very easily, just by repeating those same stages until you have enough Behemoth Stones to evolve him. Being so easy to get, you would assume it is not that good of a unit, and falls off pretty quickly after Into the Future, but that is just not the case. Comparing his stats with Courier Cat, a great generalist and mid-ranger, Courier already looks like the superior version of Courier. Courier Cat does outclass him in some elements, like cooldown, price, better survivability, and he doesn't have a blind spot. Now let's analyze their niche traits. Courier Cat has strong against floating and the ability to survive a lethal strike. This is great and makes him a strong counter to the short-range floating enemies such as the Bun Bun family. On the other hand, Courier Cat's niche traits are absolutely ridiculous. He has 4 times damage against red enemies and 2.5 times damage against behemoths. At just level 30, this gives him an insane 12,000 DPS against red enemies, and he can be boosted to deal even more damage, peaking at 20,000 DPS against red enemies at level 50. This effectively invalidates the entire red trait. Courier is simply too fast and is able to hit nearly every red enemy. The fact that you can get this unit into the future is ridiculous. When I was going through Crown Stories of Legends, one of the stages I struggled with the most was Boiling Spring, a stage that has a aggressive boss and tons of threatening support. At the time, this was one of the hardest stages I had beaten, but thanks to the existence of Courier Cat, this stage is made laughably easy, and it's not just this stage. Courier's generalist stats are so good that he is able to trivialize most other Stories of Legends stages. Now this may seem bad, but that is only half of the problem. Courier Cat also has Behemoth Slayer, which gives him 2.5 times damage against behemoths and a 0.6 times damage reduction. This makes his stats absolutely insane against behemoth enemies, and the entire behemoth archetype was designed with massively inflated stats to keep behemoth stages relevant even with a unit as overpowered as Courier Cat. This makes Courier Cat a logical choice for every behemoth stage, and makes most other anti-behemoth cats irrelevant. If you want more info about this problem, Canned Juice made a great video about this problem, which I will link in the description below. Unfortunately, this isn't even the only broken cat that this game has released. Courier Cat is not the only game-breaking unit Ponos has released. There are two more notable examples I want to talk about. One is Bomber Cat, a unit that can be obtained after beating Into the Future Chapter 3. Bomber Cat has very short range, but has the ability to freeze black enemies for 2 seconds. This means that only 2 of them are required to perma-freeze any black enemy. This is very oppressive as most black enemies have a short range, so Bomber Cat is very effective on them. Fortunately, black enemies haven't been oppressed as hard as Behemoth and red enemies because a lot of stages put long distance enemies in them to snipe Bomber Cat, making him far less effective. Another recent unit that has recently come out and has already broken many parts of the game is Talented Awakened Bahamut Cat. Bahamut Cat's talents was added in version 14.2, the most notable of which is the ability to have an explosion with every attack. This is one of the most game-breaking things to ever come to the game. The explosion gives him the ability to double his DPS against tanky threats, and against smaller threats he is able to juggle them. He can also pierce quite deep into the enemies. You would expect talents of this caliber to be locked behind endgame, but all you have to do is beat Cats of the Cosmos Chapter 2 and beat a decently hard stage. Giving players this much power in mid-game is absolutely insane, and he's able to trivialize so many stages. He will have a terrible effect on so many stages. Having great units is amazing. It can give the player so much satisfaction to absolutely destroy hard stages with units that counter that stage well. However, there is a point where a unit becomes too powerful. Why would you experiment with any other red or behemoth damage dealers when you can just throw Courier Cat in and watch the stage melt? Why would you use any other black crowd controller when Bomber Cat is just so much better in almost every way? Making units this overpowered and meta-defining creates a one-dimensional feel for many stages. Part of the fun of Battle Cats is making lineups for every stage to counter it, but if there are units that are this overpowered, it can make that a lot less fun. Ponos also designed Behemoth meta based off the fact that almost everyone has Courier Cat, which makes every other Behemoth Slayer feel incredibly weak. I believe that there really isn't a quick fix to this problem. Nerfing the units could not work unless Ponos wanted to rebalance every stage that expects the player to have these units. Ponos could also lock Bahamut Cat's talents behind the end of Uncanny Legends, and this would make him much less game-breaking. In the future, I think Ponos should only make units that appeal to a certain part of the game. They shouldn't attempt to make a unit that is relevant throughout the whole game unless they very thoroughly test it. Thanks for watching to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please consider subscribing and liking the video. This is the first time I have done a more analytical video, so I am interested in hearing feedback about it. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.